Drape Skeptics designated the Jim Youngleson lecture on ethics and responsibility. And Jim and Terry are here tonight. Terry. Jim was a longtime trustee, had an illustrious career as a lawyer, and it was Jim's sister and brother-in-law, Jonah and Jonah Sherman, wanted to honor him. Hence, we named at least one of our lectures the Youngleson Lecture on Ethics and Responsibility. We do this for, quote, his service to others and desire to inspire young people the ideals of justice, responsibility, and service by featuring speakers whose lives embody those ideals. You should know that Jim was involved in the 70s, or late 60s, in arguing for co-education at this school. So whether it's Marianne or Annie Mulholland, or one of you girls, or one of the guys who likes the girls being here, co-education was not always a rare characteristic. And we had to wait until the 70s for 1948, although we were co-ed until 1913 when we went single sex. Tonight, of course, we have Mr. Joe Drape. In just a few hours, he's become just Joe. To a lot of you in the dining room, made more friends there than most of us do in a week. And Joe is, of course, a New York Times journalist, and he's written 6 books. You've seen some of them on the slides I showed the other day. American Pharaoh and Our Boys and other bestsellers. And you may know him as the person who wrote about Charlie Villanueva and Luol Bang, and of course, Shamila Pornasani, the Afghan girl. Tonight he's going to talk about that intersection of money, culture, and sport. Sport and society, something we're all interested in. And in a way, we all have our own story. And I think what he'll say tonight and how he answers the questions will help us. Remember, at Q&A, we can ask just about anything, and I'm sure you will do that. So I give you Joe Drape from the New York Times.
Thank you all. Thank you, Jim and Terry, for having me here. When I first got invited to this, and I know one of the former headmasters pretty well, Chad Hardy, and Marty was nice enough to invite me, and I thought, boy, this is a big deal. I looked at the rosters, and there's like a bunch of heavy-duty policy people, foreign services and diplomats. So I sent my first thing back. I said, how about I talk about fake news and freedom of the press? And 2 days went by, and I said, nah, let's talk about sports. So I'm here to talk about sports. I'm just going to tell you, and I want this to be a conversation. How many athletes in here do we have? There we go. All right. How many people who are interested in reading, writing, or journalism? Okay. How many people think about ethics? All right. And then let me just think about it. Who rooted for North Carolina last night? Okay. And who thinks North Carolina's victory was a pure victory? Wow. Carolinians, I'm sure. And I'll get to this while I'm going to ask you this a little bit. All right. I am a sports reporter, which means I cover sports, but I didn't always do that. I started in Dallas, Texas. I was an English major who did not have a job. I did not know what I was going to be able to do. I knew I could read and write. I began reading as younger than you guys with a flashlight at night, with the covers pulled over, started with Sports Illustrated, started with the sports page. One summer I got grounded, and instead of making me stay inside, my mother made me read the great books for the whole summer. And the great books are something our generation knows, but you know them as Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer, The Jungle Book, Mort D'Arcy. And that's when I expanded my horizons from, instead of scores and profiles about running backs, that I could enter into this world of fiction and learn a little culture. So I knew I could read, I knew I could write. I get out, I need a job. The guy at the Dallas Morning News offers me a job for $6 an hour, no benefits, from 6 to 2:30 in the morning in the cop shop at the Dallas police shop. The cop shop is literally a police station. In those days, you listened to scanners, hoping cowboys got arrested, DWIs or murders, and the 888 and you only went on murder scenes if there was more than one fatality, because people got shot all the time, and it was only on the news if there was more than one. So that's how I started. I worked my way from there to the 4 to 1 slot, to the 1 to 10 slot, to the 10 to 7 slot. I moved to Atlanta to become a national correspondent for the Atlanta Constitution. Still a news guy, covering the Southeast. Hurricane, I actually did the San Francisco earthquake, I did Hurricane Hugo, I did the Jim Baker trial, I did Jesse Holmes' races. And these are all names that I could see the glaze on, but you guys don't have no idea that they were news of that moment. And how I crossed over to sports was in 1988, the presidential election, Michael Dukakis against George Bush I was also the first night of the Charlotte Hornets of the NBA, who are now the Bobcats. We're playing their first game as an NBA franchise in the Charlotte Coliseum. I was living in Charlotte at the time. I thought, wow, this is a team up from scratch. This is cool. I didn't have an election assignment. I went to the game. They won the game, surprisingly. It was like North Carolina last night. People came pouring out on the floor for a pro team. This was a celebration of sports. This was a celebration. This kind of goes into my theme of the intersection of how we think of ourselves. This was Charlotte saying, hey, we're a big city now. We got our first pro franchise. So we're going to celebrate this. So I watched this whole scene, and somehow or another, I say, I'm going to write a book about this first year. And I've never written a book, didn't know anything really about it. I had read a book about the Portland Trail Blazers game. It was called The Breaks of the Games by the Pulitzer Prize winning journalist named David Halberstam, who's famous for covering the Vietnam War and other things. And it really was about this team that had Bill Walton, who you guys see on the TV, Bo Lucas, Jack Ramsey was the coach. It's just how a group of individuals lived with each other, build as character, as a cohesion, as a team, and what becomes of it. And they had this remarkable season where they won the national championship. Somehow I talked myself into a book contract, and I spent the whole year with the 4 and 7 Charlotte Hornets. They won 4 games, and that the first one was it. I lived with them, I traveled with them, I tried to get to know them, I tried to cut them off, get a little sense of who they were. Among the team, they were truly awful. Bugsy Bogues, who was one of the shortest players on that team, Kelly Tripucka, who was a Notre Dame All-American, Kurt Rambis, who played for the Lakers, he was coached, he was on that team. Stephon Curry's dad, Dell, was on that team, and Stephon Curry was the 4-year-old shooting baskets. But when we were kids, off to the side during practices. So I have this grand plan. I sit down to write the book. It's June. It's supposed to be done in September. August 1st, I had 7 double-spaced type pages. It's like, wow, I'm going to have to give the money back. I don't know how to do this. Fortunately, I have friends and family in this business. They came down and gave me a shock treatment in Charlotte. Outlines, I'm sure they talked to you guys about outlines. Organization, how you organize your notes, what are you trying to say. I followed it. I finished it on time, and it's the worst book ever written. Because I barely even look at it. Up until this last book, I never even put it on the inside cover where they say other books by. And I said, no, nobody's going to read it in the morning's going to stare it out. But it taught me that my instincts were right, that sports give us a window into society that people care about. And it moved me full time over to sports because while I was doing that, the Atlanta Olympics were awarded to Atlanta. So my paper said, we need a guy who has news nuts, who knows what stories are, who's not afraid to ask hard questions, but also knows his way around sports and has an affinity for sports. I was like many of you guys, I just played, we didn't have video games. phonies in your age. So we played all sports all the time. And that's all I knew about it. That was my background. So from that, that was the first lucky break on that. Because as the lead correspondent for Atlanta, I've got it would enable me to hold my theory on this. I got to go to South Africa as apartheid was breaking up and Mandela was being freed to write a series of stories about how do you put together an Olympic team. Because Atlanta was going to be their first Olympics because they had been banned because of apartheid. How do you put an Olympic team when there's only 16 pools in the whole nation and blacks have never been able to swim in? I got to go to the Soviet Union because they were breaking up. And here was this power that we had always competed against. And they were like the big Darth Vader. All of a sudden, they're in pieces. There's no longer Soviet Union. There's Georgia, and Georgia's a gangster capital. They were good at boxing because they were run by mobsters. You had Lithuania, and they were by the sea. So they were good sailors and things like that. And it was the prism I got to develop my theory, see the world, and understand why people are into sports. And the reason I have a theory, my theory of why people are into sports is because everybody gets it. It's not threatening. We can argue Trump, Clinton, and everybody's going to get their back up right when you did, and they're saying, I disagree with you, da, da, da. We can look at the North Carolina game last night and say, 40 minutes, a great game. You have Gonzaga, this team that's just a little Jesuit college. One of my first jobs at the Times was at the college sports. I had the college beat, and I went out to Gonzaga with Mark Few's first year, and he was the assistant coach. I was taking it over. The three guys before him who had been to the tournaments all parlayed that job into $5 million contracts and went on. And he told me he was from the area, and he told me then, he said, this is the only job I want. I'm going to stay here. This is my home. I think we can win here. And I think it's about the whole, it's not about me chasing contracts. So I was really pleased last night. 19 years later, he was sitting there doing exactly what he said he was. So you had him. Here's your classic underdogs. Everybody loves underdogs. Because anybody know, who knows where Gonzaga is? Okay, it's in Spokane, Washington. And before they got good at basketball, the only thing they were known for was John Stockton was an NBA guard that went there. And they weren't even good when he was there. Then you had North Carolina. Now, I know the Carolinians here are going to take this on. I'm a Kansas. Roy Williams abandoned us, did not win a championship for the Jayhawks. Should be drawn and quartered and stayed out of the Midwest forever. So he goes, betrays us Kansas Jayhawks. He goes to North Carolina last night. He's playing for the national championship. If you would have read the New York Times, one of the few places you would have seen this, you would have seen this vaunted team he had was in the midst of a tremendous academic scandal that's gone on for 10 years, where people were taking no-show classes. They were plagiarizing papers. They were just getting through and not being able to read or write. But it was Carolina basketball, and he won his third one last night. Now, tie that to politics. Why that's going on, North Carolina, South Carolina, that game, or the regional before, when North Carolina won the regional, was supposed to be playing the home game in North Carolina. All the NCAA championships, and the NBA All-Star game, and Bruce Springsteen, and everybody else pulled out of North Carolina because why? Who knows why? The bathroom bill. All right, so here we've just on one basketball game have touched on all the ethics and the interconnectedness of sports. And that's what sports does. If you go back to history, nobody talked about segregation easily until Jackie Robinson went into baseball. Women's rights was not a big thing until Billie Jean King played Bobby Rivers. Transgender, Renee Richards was a transgender tennis player. In the 70s, we started talking about it. So, this is the world we live in, and we do like talking sports. And Marty and I were talking earlier, and John and I were talking. Right now, the only really pure thing in sports is that 40 minutes on the field. There's 60 minutes in the NFL of the football, even in the college and the NFL. I mean, who likes the NFL in there? Right? But you're okay with it. They're pretty much bred animals, drug addicted, and most of them are not going to have long, happy lives. This is proven. This is not just me saying it. I mean, I'm a Chiefs fan. I'm as guilty as anybody on this, but that's what it brings to the forefront. You've got to have these conversations to understand some of these sports. Colleges, and I'll go back to the reason I first came here was to do a story on the basketball team. And when I came up here, I thought, okay, this is just another East Coast prep school trying to get awareness, money, notoriety by bringing in guys who can play some hoop, who can't read or write. That way to go through. And I was very skeptical. I spent a week up here. And I talked to Lyle Charlie. I talked to Chan Hart. I went and talked to teachers. I talked to dissenting voices of the academy. And that's what schools should be. Not everybody should be agreeing on the same thing. If you think they're doing it wrong, as a student or a faculty member, you're able to do it. I walked away convinced that there is a balance here. And I'm going to put this to you guys. Do you think you guys do athletics and academics correctly? Somebody take that. No, step forward. There you go. Whoa, I know you.
Yeah, we do. I think there's a good balance. It's like whenever when I was looking at other schools, it was never like there was always a specialty. Like we're an art school, we focus on math or sciences more. But the here was like you can do anything you really want. Like there's no specialty.
Yes, sir.
You look at other Maple schools and you see schools like Klein Petty where they do recruit athletes and then they don't really have a good enough GPA to go to college. Like at Blair, we make sure that like these students do have a good enough GPA to get to college. Like two football players from Petty last year was amazing, but had D1 offers, didn't have a high enough GPA to qualify for Division One. So that was at a D2 school. But at Blair, we made sure our athletes spend time in the classroom and on the field.
Well, that's good, and you should, but don't be so sure that, there's people who've come out of Blair that went Ivy because they played sports, who wouldn't have got in if they wouldn't have played sports. And those are the facts of life. I mean, I was telling Marty earlier, I went to Stanford most of last year to do a series that ended up being, unfortunately, about sexual assault on campus and athletes' abuse of it, and how there was a double standard. But in the course of that, Stanford was very forthcoming that, the question was, how can you be number one in football and keep up with all the standards of academic greatness and excellence that you say you do? It's the hardest place to get in. It's 4.6% of athletes get in. And they had to look me in the eye when I asked them to tell me none of our football team, none of our big Division I athletes in the glamour sports could have gotten in here on their own. They're not dummies. I'm not saying they didn't belong there. But if my son, Jack Drape, had the same boards and the same scores and the same grades and the same activities and just popped it in January versus Lou Alden, let's just use him, who had the same things he did, but what they did, Stanford does, and the Ivy do this too. They come and find them when they're freshmen and sophomores. They go to the counselors. They said, make them take AP classes, move them up here, take the test 5 or 6 times. All I'm saying is it's not guilty. We can have a discussion if it's ethical, but winning championships means a lot of money. That game last night was the culmination of a $19 billion Turner CBS contract. That's a lot of money on it. You only get a piece of that if you make the field of 64. The Ivy League, the vaunted Ivy League, Used to be old school where only the league champion went. This year, they realized they were missing the money on the pie, so they put a tournament for the first time ever in 100 and some years in basketball. So, when you guys make your decisions on these things, being an athlete with decent scores will get you in places. Now, do people think that's fair? Anyway, you're shaking your head. Talk to me.
I don't think it's necessarily fair, but it's something that can't be changed immediately or even necessarily in a medium amount of time because sports bring a lot of people a lot of satisfaction and happiness both by fighting and watching it. I think that it's such a big revenue source for colleges and universities that stopping that favoritism would cost them too much.
Somebody else. Yes, sir.
The only problem that I have with it is for the student athlete themselves who focuses their whole kind of what they're doing and most of their life on playing sport and stuff, and at the end doesn't end up reaching like the level that they wanted to or like a professional level and that ends up like in the middle of college, at the end of college, realizing like you're a step behind a lot of other people who have been like focused on their education. So I think that it's not technically fair because I feel like there is a risk being like an athlete who's focused on one sport or is really good at that sport and goes to college for that. Because there is a risk that it doesn't end up the way it is. So I feel like I don't feel like it's totally unfair.
Two good points. There's no wrong answers in this case. So you just forwarded through it. The point I'm going to tell you reminded me of is, okay, is there any music prodigies in here? Because there's music prodigies and math prodigies and medical prodigies who get yanked out and they go straight line to Stanford and the Ivies just because they're great musicians, they're great engineers, they're great thinkers. And nobody bitches about them, do you? Nobody's standing up in front of you now and saying, well, that violinist should have got in just because she can play a hell of a fiddle. So that's the difference is that it's in the public eye. Athletics are. And to your point, you're right. I don't think it's fair. I've been around big time programs. They can't even have summer jobs. They can't tend bar. They can't scoop ice cream. What they are doing is what I do for my career. It's 40 hours a week plus. It's film study, it's working out, it's practice. And why would the NCAA, who's making $19 billion, everybody's making money except for health, except the actual labor. Why should they say, you gotta go to college for 1 year before you go to the NBA? That's what they're doing. They said, you gotta go, and you can go be one and done. If you go to Kentucky or North Carolina or KU, and this is honestly what happens. They take 12 hours the first semester. And Marty and I were talking about this. I went to school that had easy classes too. You take Pop Rock Culture 1, Pop Rock Culture 2, Marriage and Family. Write these down, you're going to need them when you go to college. The Evolution of Jazz. They take those 12 and then they drop out the second semester because they know they don't just quit going to class. They enroll, they're on scholarship because they know, last night, at least 9 guys, 4 guys on that floor and probably 30 guys in that tournament played their last basketball game and went to their last class. They're done. They're hanging out right now. They're going in there. So the NCAA makes them do that because it's in the money. Well, you can go into high school and play baseball, play in the minor leagues, right? Nobody says you got to go to college and play that. Tennis, you're good enough to play tennis. You don't have to go to high school. You can go to an academy down at Florida, the IMG Academy. And they're homeschooled. You can do that. So, these are what ethics are about. Is everything's situational. It's how you feel about it. Questions to this point. Anybody, if you want to go a different tack, please tell me. And yes, sir.
What is your opinion on the IMG Academy? Kind of like, or at that young age, really almost doing a 50-50 of sports and education. Do you think it's bad that you're kind of stunning high school education by throwing too much sports in, by throwing too much practice time in? Or you feel like it's a good balance for the type of students that go there?
Well, I believe, like this institution believes, I was Jesuit educated. It's part of my tenets that it's all about being well-rounded. And the more study you do in college coaches, the football championship, we had a great story by a friend of mine, Karen Krause, who played in that. It was Alabama and Clemson. And both those coaches, Lou Saban and Dabo, that they had 3/4 of both their starting lineups were 2 or more sport athletes. That they prefer athletes that play several seasons because A, they're better rounded. It's a good thing to be a great wrestler and just sit on the edge of the bench as a basketball player. I know those seasons collide, but you get what I mean. You can't be good at everything. But the era of specialization makes it too live or die, higher level. You gotta do this. If I fail out at 14, I'm a failure in life. And it's not good for the body. The Southeast Conference has the best baseball players, and their whole pitching staffs are from up here. And you know why they're up here? Because they don't throw as much. Those guys play year round. So they come recruit the Massachusetts, Connecticut, New England people because they can only play in the summer. And so they don't have as much innings in livelihood. So, you know, hopefully my 12-year-old's playing 3 sports. You know, and the other fact of the matter, and I'm sorry for you athletes, is nobody in this room is playing pro. I guarantee you. I'm a gambling man, and there ain't a single one who are going to go pro. And you know, there's probably 5 or 10 of you who might go Division I. You know, the odds, it's a numbers game, guys. So you know, it's far more important to be well-rounded and to understand your strengths and limitations than it is to get homeschooled and try to be a tennis. I mean, it's very hard to be a professional athlete. You know, look who's come out of this school, and they were high end, and how many actually hit and hung on? You know, does anybody ever count? Name the 5 greatest athletes that came out of Blair Academy, success-wise. Royal Ivey's a D-League coach, and he played, he had a nice, we were talking about that earlier, he had a nice career. Dang has hung on great. Deion Lewis is a player. You know what Deion Lewis's average, you know what his lifespan is going to be for an NFL running back? It's about 4 years. 4 years. No, as a running back, making money. Making money. 4 years. NFL contracts aren't guaranteed either. You say it, they say $100 million. They ain't getting $100 million. They signed you for $4 million, and if you can last another year, you get $6 million. And if you last the 3rd year, they give you $10 million. Then they're going to cut you because they ain't paying the rest. That's Tony Romo. Did you guys see that today? You know, he's out. He's going to become a broadcaster because he's got little kids, and he don't want to be a drooling, brain-addled guy at this point. And, you know, those are the decisions. Those, again, we come back to the ethics of things. You have to decide what is right for you and what the right thing to do is. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
When you talked about the massive move the NCAA makes of college athletics, and that the only way to really compensate is with education that they can't really use because so much time practicing. Should the NCAA be paying all of that?
Absolutely. These guys should be paid, you know, 50, 60 grand a year. You know, and really, if they want to get real about it, they wouldn't even make them go to school. You just recruited athletes, the teams, field the teams, put the school colors on it, and let them play. Try to pay their due. I mean, right now, the NCAA's, and there's Canada works on this right now. They got the best of both worlds. They're the minor league system without the minor league expenses. I mean, you know, the Yankees, Mets, they have to fund 6 teams And those teams they rely on their own concessions, their own ticket sales. These guys ride buses, all that costs money. The NCAA is not paying anybody, they're just collecting. When you go into the NCAA arena, when you go to those games last night, you have to have a Coke or a Dasani water on there. They take it away from you because they paid to be in the arena as the sponsors of it. They are shaking down every single inch right there. I did a story on the business of Alabama football, which is another interesting kind of ethical deal. Best football money you can buy, it's religion, it's God, it's everything like that. It's the only Division I school that pays money back to the university, that has gives them $15 million a year, does not take any money from the university. There's a reason Nick Saban is the highest paid coach, not only coach, but the employee of Alabama is $7 million. The president of the school only makes $800,000. And the reason is he's making big money for that state. What he's also done, and again, this kind of goes back to the Blair thing, by bringing Alabama football to young men and women like yourselves from this part of the country, they've gone from 28%, 68% in-state students to 52% out-of-state students. Out-of-state students, they can pay out-of-state tuition, so they've doubled their revenues there. They've taken their National Honor Society finalists to the top 3 behind Harvard and Cal Berkeley, because now they can go out and get the best and the brightest and pay their way as they come. It's like instead of padding your basketball team, they're saying, hey, let's raise our SAT average. Let's raise our national honors. Let's get more endowment money. And it's worked tremendous. And if I were all you guys, I'd be looking at state universities in the South and the Midwest. And they want you. You're from a demographic that is undercovered. They'll pay for you. They want bright kids there. So, that's the give and take of things. Yes, sir.
Given the problem with professional football, is there any chance in your mind that its popularity will go the way of boxing? We'll see 30 years from now that it's not the dominant sport?
I think we've seen them right now. They had to, for the first year ever, they had to give back advertising to their sponsors and the networks. Their ratings were down 15%, 20%. They're going to Europe, just like big tobacco went to the rest of the world, because people knew smoking was bad here, so let's go sell it to China, to Africa, to third world nations. That's why they're trying to expand into Europe and other parts of the country. It's to the point that you don't. And again, I'm a football fan, and my son plays football. That's talk about ethics. Wait until you guys have young kids, and he comes and says, "I want to play tackle football," and you say, "Well, I'm going to say yes, you can play," because I moved him to Kansas to hang out with the high school football team for a year, and he watched them win 64 games in a row and become the national champions. And, he wants to move back to Smith Center, Kansas, to become the Red Wing for the football team. So that's the monster I've created. But it's gotten to the point where you do feel a little guilty watching this. The game's too fast. It's too big. They hit too hard. I mean, I've had the opportunity to stand on the sideline of an NFL game, and it's like standing on the side of I-80 watching a car crash. I mean, these guys are flying at each other, and when they hit, you hear. And they're losing. They're losing.
Sure. Can you talk a little about the book of Power Boys, about that team and why you went out there and what you saw?
Yeah, I was working at the Times office. I saw a story. It was right in the middle of the recession about this little team in Kansas that had scored 71 points in the first quarter, which was a record. I'm from that area, and I never heard of it. I called up and I said, "What is this? Is this 8-man football?" I couldn't even imagine. He said, "No, there was an old coach named Roger Barnes who says, I'm embarrassed, it was against my hometown. We tried not to run it up, but everything that possibly could go wrong went wrong. And you look at the film, I mean, he's running into the ground, and then the other team's throwing interceptions. So he goes, come on down and let's talk. So Smith Center is the dead center of the United States. It's a town of 1,300, and the high school has 63 kids. And everybody plays football, everybody's in the school play, everybody's in the band and the choir. It's just those schools and farmers mostly, you've got to do everything. I got there, and in 3 days, I knew there was something going here because they never talked about winning or losing, ever. His whole mantra was, let's just do a little bit better each day. And that's all we do. Every practice would start with a conversation in the deal about girls, about homework, about respecting your parents. This guy, he kind of looked like Wilford Brimley, the cowboy. He kind of sounded like Eeyore of Winnie the Pooh, and then was very laconic, a big old belly, a walrus mustache, and had won 400 games, 8 state championships. And when I got there the first time, it was in the middle of a 55-game winning streak. And they ran. They didn't pass. They passed 4 times a year. So everybody knew where it was coming. It was up the middle or to the right or to the left. And I just kind of got captured. My son was 3 at the time. I had been in New York a long time. And I thought, my wife was working at Newsweek. And it was just kind of time to reset, to take my own advice and speed more well around it. And I knew it was a great book, and I wanted to hang around it. So I talked her into it, and you see, she was very funny about it because she's from Chicago, had been in New York 20 years. It was high fashion you could be, I guess. And she goes, you go and find us a place, because if I go and see it, I'll never leave. I'll never go. And so I went and found a place that was like right on the train tracks on the wrong side of town, and found out that for $300 a month, it had no shower, it only had a bathtub. And that was our homestay. And we went down there and ended up spending the greatest year of our life and made friends for life. People from the high school still come up and stay with us. And it was shocking. It was as shocking. You don't know what the sound of silence sounds like. I mean, I walk out of my apartment in New York City, and there's more people on my square block than the whole county of Smith Center, 30 miles. 30 miles, 1,800 people versus Manhattan Island is 7 miles and there's 9 million. And it's just mind-blowing not to hear it. You'd be driving down the street or the country roads, and everybody would have their hand on their steering wheel and lift a finger and say hello. They got used to seeing it. You know what fingers you see in New York? You don't see that one. And it just ended up becoming a story about how a town, it takes a village, but it was about how you really have to invest in everyone. And we had the largest per capita age over 85. It was old. The young people were moving away, going and doing other things. And they still had this football. They still had the high school. It wasn't even the football, it was the high school. That's what kind of kept the whole town up. It was where you went to the plays. It was where you went on Friday nights. And as I did this book, it was great and fun. And it was a bestseller. And, it did very well. But I got these PhDs calling me. And they would say, you've just done a case study of character. And they said, this guy's no different than Jack Bolden, 1-year alumni, or Jack Welch. That usually when you have a successful culture, you build a culture, it's an iconic figure who leads the way. And there's certain practices that get everybody swimming in the same direction. One of his was after every game, you circled up on the field, the whole town, moms, dads, brothers, what have you, and you held hands, and one Christian and one in prayer or anything, and just like, okay, what are we grateful for? What do we got coming this week? What do the wheat's doing this week? It was just this quick little 10-minute huddle that got everybody involved. And, it's been very, very successful. He eventually retired. We're still with him, still doing the same thing. Anybody? Yes, sir.
In terms of pros, which would you rather prefer? Like, for example, the NFL and the NBA having a salary cap compared to the MLB, where it's based on how much money the owner has.
It's what the market will bear. That's what life's all about, unfortunately. Fortunately, I don't know. I'm not against making money. I'm not against a utility field shortstop making $4 million a year. Not the NFL, I just don't think it's fair because of the sacrifice and abuse those guys. And to me, that's the real league, where it's 32 rich guys who come with their hand out to every city and state and say, pay for my stadium or I'll move it. So now the NFL, who is always against gambling, Oakland's just now going to Las Vegas. The NFL, who plays fantasy draft? DFS. DFS, FanDuel Draft Game. I spent 2 years ago having a great time kicking the hell out of that industry because it was just, you're throwing money away. And it was a crooked back alley game, but it captured young people. In the NFL, all those leagues, money were behind them. And, that's the hypocrisy of this thing. They wanted to take all the money from everywhere. So, it's what the market will bear. There's no great model of it. Just
What sort do you think of the rise in the
lax, baby.
Oh.
Lax, baby. No, there's a couple, and I've seen the data. Lax is one because, and face it, I got a son who plays lax. It's like for white guys who are not good enough to play other stuff. They're not athletic enough. And what's going to happen is lax is going to start to appeal to the same demographic that basketball appeals to. And then you're going to have to go bowling or something like that. I mean, that's what's going to happen. The other big sport is hockey. Hockey. That's the best place to get a college scholarship. These are the truth, the studies of it. They have the most money. There's not enough American players. They're filled with Canadians. And the Canadians would rather go play junior. They have the baseball mindset. Let's go minors all the way around. So those are the two ones that are coming up. Trying to think what else. Anybody else got ones? Soccer, and this is funny. It's a debate in our office. We cover the hell out of the World Cup. We cover soccer. We just hired a guy in London to be our Premier League guy. And I see the numbers. It's an un-American game. Right? It will never catch on in America. This 0-0 tie is against every bit of our nature. But we want to watch it on the World Cup, right? I mean, I tuned in. It's the only time I'll ever watch it. So I know they're playing. I know the youth leagues they're playing. I mean, they built it up very good and expanded the whole universe. But I don't see anybody rushing to watch MLS games.
What do you think was your first international football team?
I think it's soon. It's going to be Jacksonville's going to move to London. And that's because Jacksonville's got bad weather. Yes, sir.
So how do you think that's going to work with time difference and stuff? Of course, you see games played in London, but they have a bye week right after, and they have time to recover. Like, how do you think that's going to work? I mean, after games of the year, teams are going to have to fly to London. And especially divisional teams that have to play 2 games a year. One there, 1 year, but still, it's not like you can have a bye week out there.
Again, it's 32 guys looking out to their bottom line. They'll find a way to do it. They can take a space shuttle and do it. Yes, sir.
Do you think we're looking, heading toward Division I athletes striking to get equity and get pay? Do you think that is coming?
Yeah, Northwestern has done that.
Right.
It takes a lot, like any union, it takes a lot of unity. And you can't have people willing to cross the line. At this point, you still have enough desperate young people who this is their only way. So, it's coming that way. But, we're still a little bit away. What about the writers in there? Anyone want to ask about writing or anything like that? Writing? Oh, writers? Like, you're a writer? I cover horses, man. I love the horses. Yes?
How do you believe your ability to look at things you've been able to see over the world and the world events, your ability to look at them maybe with a different eye because of what you usually do write at, has affected your writing on it?
Good question. I'll tell you that this is the key to reading and writing, or to writing, I think, is listening. I'm going to tell you the story that really kind of taught me that. When I was a junior reporter, Mother's Day, a woman lost her two twin 16-year-old daughters in a car crash the night before. And they said, go out, talk to the family, and come back with 2 pictures of the girls. I'm horrified. I was like, please not be home, please not be home, please not be home. And I get there, crowded their home. I knock on the door. I'm Joe Drape from the Dallas Morning News. Can I talk to you about your daughters? They whispered right in, fixed me in place, sat me down, and talked and talked. Everybody has a story they want to tell. And that is the key thing. You've got to take time and listen. You can't say, push for the story you want to hear. You want to hear the story they're going to tell. So that's what I try to do is when I try to draw people out, let them tell me what they're going to do, what they want to say. And then it becomes a conversation and a dialogue. I mean, honestly, I hold a notebook and I probably write down, I need dog food. I mean, something like that. It's a prop. The thing is mainly to listen, to understand, to empathize. And, I think we all bring our worldviews. I come from a big family. I'm a middle child. I can sort through some things. I'm quick to understand where everybody's coming from. So, that's how he looks at it. And, sports, again, I just keep going back. I can't thank Jim and Terry enough. That it's so non-threatening that you can take on big ideas in sports because it is something everybody can find a common ground. And then you surprise me. Tired of it? Ready to go to bed? Yes, sir.
It's not a cabinet issue. How do you view that type of protest, this particular protest?
I think it's, whether you agree with it or not, I think it's great.
Maybe you have to tell them what that is.
Colin Kaepernick was a quarterback, the African-American quarterback who kneels at the Star Spangled Banner before each game. Interesting guy, was a Super Bowl quarterback. He's African-American, was adopted by a white couple from Nevada, Utah. He feels very moved. He gives all the black shoes to make a stand. And the thing that's different is he made that stand quietly. He had done that for 4 or 5 games before anybody noticed. He was doing it for himself. When they finally figured out that's what he was doing, people were burning his jersey, stomping on his jersey, doing things, saying he was bad for the game and there's no place for that football or sports. Well, to me, that's really the perfect place. It's the flip side of what I'm talking about. I mean, the '68 Olympics, Tommy Smith and John Carlos raising their fist on the protest black flag. Muhammad Ali is probably the most courageous human being, let alone sportsman. He gave up the prime of his career to stand up against Vietnam. And said, no Viet Cong ever did anything to me. And, I think that makes a big impact. And I think if people understand, if you're doing it authentically and organically. I'm around LeBron a lot, but I had to be around LeBron a lot. And LeBron, he decides that he's going to come out for a cause. He's very calculating. He says, okay, I'm gonna wear this Black Lives Matter shirt because now I'm comfortable coming up. And I'm not dissing him or anything, it's just, he's a whole different case study of a guy who's got so much stuff coming at him all the time. So many things that people want from him, so many things he has to endorse and he's affiliated with. And, he's a guy who's really, high school is all he went to. And anything he knows is self-taught. He's, what's Professor's help me in here? He's uneducated, but what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, but even more than that, he's worldly. He's educated without being educated. Is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it's more than street smart. I mean, he has gone and read case studies, Harvard Business School case studies. He does try to do these. But yeah, so when he comes out and does a protest, all eyes are on him. If he wears that shirt, it's national news automatically. Versus Kaepernick, who did it for 5 games and nobody knows. What do we got? His acting? What do we got? I don't know that. Okay.
In order. I wonder if you could comment on the athletes that I grew up watching, the basketball, Jordan, Magic, and those guys. Do you think we view them differently if they played in the social media world? You brought up LeBron, all eyes are on him. Would their legacies, do you think, be different if we were sort of spying on every aspect of their lives?
I think there's an element of that, but I would go a half a generation before. Michael Jordan changed everything because they figured out you could sell underwear and tennis shoes with these guys. That was the deal. Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, they didn't have massive endorsement contracts. They just were basketball players. Jordan was the first guy who was a pitcher. So that was step one, is that, okay, Jordan famously said, hard again, I was there during this, there was a black Arab Charlotte running against Jesse Helms, the noted old Dixie racist, whatever you want to do, Republican. And Harvey Gantt knew Jordan, asked him to come out and endorse him. And Jordan says, hey, Republicans buy tennis shoes too. So he didn't do it. And that's one. Now you go to social media, forget the athletes. What about when we were in college and we had social media? I mean, I don't know. You guys got to be so careful. I mean, I've looked at these cases for these assaults on campuses and seen the paperwork and of both sides. And I'm petrified for everybody going to college. I mean, it is big boy stuff, big girl stuff. Lives could be ruined. And I don't want to get too down on it, but think about what you're doing. And the social media of this stuff. You can see these guys drunk some places. I was reading today, Richie Allen was a Hall of Fame, but he's not in the Hall of Fame. He was a baseball player in Philadelphia and Chicago. And there's a big controversy he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. His numbers are there. And the story was saying why he didn't is because he had a drinking problem. He would stop at bars before games. And writers knew that. That's why they're not voting. And now if you did that, you can go on Facebook Live in 15 seconds, right? So, yes, ma'am.
Do you feel the athletic seasons have been extended beyond where they should be? There are many more injuries today. They're playing football in frigid weather. It used to be that the World Series would be in September. It's now much later. Do you feel it's a matter of how much money can be made by each of the franchises and then the injuries? There's just so many aspects.
All those are parts of it. And yes, it's, day games at Cubs Stadium. Okay, that was great. That was an institution until they figured out games under the lights, you could get on TV and make more money. But again, goes into the greater culture. Why are we hurrying to have driverless cars? All right? What greater good does that do? right? It's gonna put a bunch of truck drivers out of work, out of delivery, out of work. We don't know what the danger is, but all this technology is driving these things, and the same things happen in sports. We did a whole series called Limitless, and it was about the 99-year-old guy who ran a sub-3-minute marathon. It was like Norwegian surfers in below zero temperatures. There's always human nature wants to walk on the moon. They want to be the next big thing. So, again, sports feeds into what's going on in the culture. I mean, the technology is crazy.
But sports haven't become, and some of these sports aren't family sports anymore. They're because many of the games, and most of the games right now, especially in baseball, and that's one of the saddest parts of what's going on today.
Oh yeah, I had to send my son to bed at halftime last night because that's a 9 o'clock tip. Go to an NBA game, and I was fortunate enough that I got tickets for the South Carolina Florida game, to East Regional, and they were $175. I took him and 3 friends. By the time you have 2 Cokes, hot dogs, what it was, the hot dog, they don't even serve beer at the NCAA games, so that wasn't even a problem. So, 4 dogs, 4 bottles of water, 2 pretzels, it was $89. So, they're pricing out families, so it's not become a family thing anymore. That whole thing of going to the game with your dad is becoming a lost thing, or your mom. So, what kind of athletes do we have in here? Who plays what? The women first. What do they play? Basketball. And did you guys watch the UConn women?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
That was crazy.
Everybody's got to lose. It's pretty cool. It was pretty cool. And that's a great program. That's a great program. Do you think do you want to play in college?
Yeah.
And what years are you?
Juniors.
Are you guys starting to get sniffs from people?
Yeah.
What range of schools?
Like my 2 top schools right now are George Washington and UConn. Like I wouldn't be able to get it as a normal student.
Yeah. We were laughing when you were saying
I've got a very good friend. I was telling Marty earlier, whose son went to Bronx Science, which is a fine public high school. Was well-rounded, but he got into Cornell mainly because of Rose. He's 6'5", and he was a great crew prospect, and they moved him to the front end. But then you guys run the track.
Yeah. And crew.
That's true. And do you guys want to compete at the college level?
Probably it's a lot fun.
Or D2 or D3, club? Yeah. And what about the men? What men do what here? Male athletes, football?
Basketball player over there. A couple golfers and stuff.
And on football, the sad thing is, it is a great game. It is a great game, and high school football is a key component, I think, in growing up. It's the one game that teaches you whatever you do affects the guy next to you or the guy behind. Everybody has to work together. You can't, the schemes the football players do is, if you're a 2-tech, you can't come up and blitz. You got to fill your holes to get it in for the next guy. And I really do think high school football is sort of a must thing for young guys. And I also know pretty much that November of your senior year in high school is the last football game 99.9% of any of us will play, because we're not good enough to go get hit that hard. So these are all the things I'm doing.
Joe, if research in the future shows that B League and high school level leave contusions on the brain or whatever that will affect you later on, would you change your view of that, or are you still thinking that the character building nature of football is all important? Because now we're starting to see that it may be not just pro college, but but I don't know.
No doubt.
At what point would you change your mind about your kid?
What goes hand in hand with that is I don't want to be the guy who says no to something you want to do. What if he says, I want to go climb rocks, I want to be the greatest rock climber in the world, which is very dangerous and a very worthy goal. If I say, no, you can't climb rocks. I mean, there's a risk in life for all of us. And, you know,
Folks, we're a little over after 8 o'clock. If you'd like to speak with Joe, come on down. And if you could just give 1 minute to Jim Youngleton, he'd like to say something. Again, Jim is former trustee and all that.
I wanted to mention, Joe, especially in today's time, the present time, first thing I do when I get up in the morning is to go outside, pick up my paper version of the New York Times. Then I go to the sports page for two reasons. One, I don't want to deal with the present news going on, which is on the first page. And second, I find it to be the sports section, in and of itself, the equivalent of a literary magazine. It is so well written and so well pointing toward stories that really have human to. And this is one of the reasons why I appreciate it so much.
thank you, Jim. Thank you. I appreciate it.